What kind of emperor survives betrayal as a child, conquers rebels as a teenager, and grows into a man feared across an entire continent? People still ask the question, who is Basil II? Some call him a monster, some call him a savior, but everyone agrees on one thing: he was unlike any ruler the empire ever produced. Before we continue, subscribe. It helps us keep history's greatest stories alive. Basil was born in a palace, but he grew up surrounded by fear. His family was powerful, but power in Byzantium was never safe. Everyone wanted the throne, everyone whispered schemes, and every shadow in the palace hid someone who could poison, betray, or overthrow a child emperor before he even understood the world around him. When Basil's father died suddenly, the crown passed to him long before he was ready. He became a symbol, useful, valuable, but helpless. Powerful generals and ambitious regents ruled in his name, pulling the empire apart while pretending to protect it. Basil learned early that the throne wasn't a gift, it was a threat. He didn't fight back with anger or loud arguments. He simply watched, quietly and intensely, studying the faces of every man who tried to control him. He learned patience from danger. He learned focus from fear. And he learned that survival, not comfort, was the true language of emperors. The empire held its breath. As Basil grew older, he surprised everyone. He didn't become a charming prince or a political schemer. He wasn't handsome, he wasn't social, and he didn't care about court games or flattering nobles. Instead, he trained, harder than soldiers, longer than captains, pushing his body and mind until both felt as disciplined as steel. When Basil finally became emperor at 16, he had the title but not the power. Two great generals, Bardas and Bardas Phokas, rose in rebellion, sure the young ruler would break under pressure. They expected fear, they expected panic, they expected a boy pretending to be an emperor. You know what Basil did next, don't you? Instead of begging the nobles for support, Basil turned to men who cared nothing for politics, the Varangian Guard. These northern warriors respected strength more than bloodlines, and Basil earned their loyalty by fighting beside them, training with them, and living like a soldier instead of a king. In return, they gave him what he needed most: an army that would never betray him. The rebellions collapsed under Basil's relentless campaigns. Bulgar-Slayer was killed, Bardas Phokas surrendered, and the quiet, underestimated boy suddenly stood alone, not as a puppet, but as the true emperor of Byzantium, hardened by betrayal and victory. Basil did not forgive. With rebel generals defeated, Basil turned his eyes to a different enemy, the Bulgarian Empire, under its fierce ruler, Samuel. Bulgaria had grown bold, raiding Byzantine land and humiliating Basil's predecessors for years. Everyone expected the young emperor to negotiate, to compromise, to accept the losses as part of ruling a fragile empire. But Basil was done accepting anything. He remembered being powerless. He remembered watching others use his throne for their own gain. And he remembered the weight of humiliation. So he gathered his armies, strengthened his borders, studied his enemy, and prepared for a war that would not end quickly. And still he marched. The early campaigns were brutal. The Bulgarians fought like ghosts through forests and mountains, ambushing Basil's forces and disappearing before he could strike back. More than once the young emperor tasted defeat. More than once he found his army exhausted, surrounded, or pushed to the edge of survival. But each setback sharpened him. He learned from every mistake. He adapted to Bulgaria's tactics, pushed his soldiers to match their endurance, and refused to disappear into the safety of the palace. He slept in the mud, fought through storms, crossed frozen passes, and won the respect of men who once doubted he was strong enough to hold a sword. Rome whispered his name. Through the years, Basil became something rare, an emperor who lived on the front lines. His presence turned tired soldiers into believers. His discipline reshaped broken armies into instruments of precision. And slowly, relentlessly, he began to turn the tide against Bulgaria, city by city, valley by valley, grinding Samuel's empire down with the patience of stone. Samuel felt the pressure. He fortified cities, shifted armies, prepared for a final clash that would decide the fate of his kingdom. Basil accepted that challenge without hesitation. He had waited his entire life for a test worthy of the iron he had forged inside himself. But that moment had not come yet. Not the victory, not the cruelty, not the legend. The world thought it knew Basil II, but the Bulgar-Slayer had only begun to emerge. Basil did not rush into war. He pressed forward slowly, carefully, like a man carving through stone rather than soil. Every road he built, every fort he repaired, every supply line he secured, each one tightened the noose around Bulgaria. This was not a quick campaign. This was a long, grinding avalanche, gathering strength with every step. War changed him. As the years passed, Basil stopped being the quiet young emperor who trained alone in the courtyard. He became something colder, sharper, and more determined. His soldiers said he never smiled, never rested, and barely slept. He seemed carved from the same iron he demanded from his men, unyielding, relentless, impossible to break. And still he marched. Bulgaria struck back with fury. Emperor Samuel launched ambushes in mountain passes, burned towns to slow Basil's advance, and used the land itself as a weapon. Sometimes Basil advanced, only to lose ground again. Sometimes victories cost so many lives that his generals wondered if the campaign would ever end. But Basil kept going, not because he loved war, but because he refused to lose. The empire watched in silence. Years turned into decades. Basil outlasted generals, rebels, enemies, and even the men who originally doubted him. He built alliances, broke others, and pushed his armies across impossible terrain. Slowly, Samuel's defenses weakened. City by city, fortress by fortress, Basil tightened his grip until Bulgaria stood on the edge of collapse. Then came the moment that would define him forever. In 1014, at the Battle of Clydion, Basil finally trapped the Bulgarian army in a narrow valley. They fought with desperate courage, but Basil's trap closed around them like a steel fist. Thousands were captured, so many that counting them became a nightmare. And in the aftermath, Basil made a decision that history would never forget. Basil did not forgive. He ordered the captured Bulgarian soldiers to be blinded. Almost 14,000 men, not killed, blinded. They were sent back to their emperor in groups, each led by one man left with a single eye. When Samuel saw them, thousands of maimed soldiers stumbling home, his heart failed. Some say he died of grief. Some say he died of shock. Either way, the Bulgarian Empire broke with him. Rome whispered Basil's new name, the Bulgar-Slayer. After that day, resistance collapsed like wet clay. City after city surrendered, and fortress walls opened without a fight. And Basil marched into Bulgaria, not as a conqueror celebrating glory, but as a man fulfilling a vow he had carried for half his life. By 1018, the Bulgarian Empire ceased to exist. Basil had erased it from the map. The frontier finally fell silent. But Basil wasn't finished. With the Balkans secured, he strengthened the empire's borders, rebuilt roads, expanded the army, and restored the treasury. He didn't trust officials, so he inspected his provinces personally. He didn't trust nobles, so he cut their power. He didn't trust comfort, so he lived like a soldier, even in victory. Simple food, simple clothes, and endless work. He ruled like a man expecting betrayal around every corner, because that was how he had been raised. Basil had no wife, no children, no heirs waiting to continue his legacy. He had only the empire, and he poured everything into strengthening it. Under him, Byzantium became richer, safer, and more powerful than it had been in centuries. Trade flourished, borders expanded, armies stood ready at all times. Even the empire's enemies admitted one truth: Basil could not be moved. In his final years, he grew even quieter. He spent his time inspecting troops, reviewing defenses, and planning campaigns he would never live to lead. The scars of his battles covered him from shoulder to ankle, each one a reminder of the life he had chosen. He grew old, but he did not soften. He remained the emperor who never forgot where he came from. History held its breath. Basil II died in 1025 after nearly 50 years on the throne. His empire was strong, stable, and feared. But the moment he was gone, everything began to slip. Weaker emperors replaced him. The borders he secured crumbled. The nobles he had kept under control clawed back their power. Within a century, Byzantium began to fall apart. And yet, Basil's story endured. His enemies remembered the terror he brought. His soldiers remembered the discipline he demanded. His empire remembered the peace he created through relentless war. And history remembered the question that echoes even today: who is Basil II? A monster? A savior? A soldier? An emperor? Maybe he was all of them. Empires rise, empires fall, but the shadow of the Bulgar-Slayer still stretches across history long after his empire vanished from the earth. Hey, I know you enjoyed this story. Please support this channel by liking this video and hitting the subscribe button. Thank you. Also, do not forget to check out other amazing stories from this channel. Bye!